Good day, Prof. I am Antonette A. Soterol from BSED major in Social Studies 1E. Today, I will discuss about managing and caring for the self, learning to be a better student. So what happens during learning? So during learning, brain and behavior changes. Each and every time we learn something new, our brain forms new connections and neurons and makes existing neural pathways stronger or weaker. Our brain will continue changing right up until the end of our life. And the more we learn along the way, the more our brain will change. So, our brain is primarily composed of about 85 billion neurons, which is more than the number of stars we can see with the naked eye in the night sky. A neuron is a cell which acts as a messenger sending information in the form of nerve impulses, like electrical signals, to other neurons. So neurons are responsible for carrying information throughout the human body. So based on my research, the neurons found in the human nervous system can be divided into three classes. First, we have sensory neurons. Second, we have motor neurons. Third, we have interneurons. So when we say sensory neurons get information about what's going on inside and outside of the body and bring that information into the central nervous system so it can be processed. For example, if you pick up a hot coal, sensory neurons with endings in your fingertips would convey the information to your central nervous system that it was really hot. Second, motor neurons. So motor neurons get information from other neurons and convey commands to your muscles, organs, and glands. For example, if you pick up a hot coal, eight motor neurons innervating the muscles in your fingers would cause your hand to let go. Third and the last is interneurons. So interneurons, which are found only in the central nervous system. It connects one neuron to another. They receive information from other neurons. It's either sensory neurons or interneurons and transmit information to other neurons, either motor neurons or interneurons. So for example, if you pick up a hot coal, the signal from the sensory neurons in your fingertips would travel to interneurons in your spinal cord. Some of these interneurons would signal to the motor neurons controlling your finger muscles. It's cause you to let go. So while others would transmit the signal up the spinal cord to neurons in the brain where it would be perceived as pain. We have three basic functions of a neuron. So first is neuron can receive signals or information. Second, neuron will integrate incoming signals. So neuron to determine whether or not the information should be passed along. Also, neuron communicate signals to target cells. So, in other neurons are muscles or glands. When you are learning, important changes take place in your brain, including the creation of new connections between your neurons. So in this phenomenon is called neuroplasticity. According to neurologist and educator Judy Willis, neuroplasticity is defined as the selective organizing of connections between neurons in our brains. This means that when people repeatedly practice an activity or access a memory, their neural networks, groups of neurons that fire together, creating electrochemical pathways, shape themselves according to that activity. Or when people stop practicing new things, the brain will eventually eliminate or prune the connecting cells that form the pathways. Like in a system of freeways connecting various cities, the more cars going to a certain destination, the wider the road that carries them needs to be. The fewer cars traveling that way, however, the fewer lanes are needed. Neuroscientists have been cursing cells that fire together, wire together, meaning that if you perform a task or recall some information that causes different neurons to fire in concert, it strengthens the connections between those cells. Over time, these connections become thick, hardy road maps that link various parts of the brain, and stimulating one neuron in the sequence is more likely to trigger the next one to fire. Thus, says Willis that practice makes permanent. The more times the network is stimulated, the stronger and more efficient it becomes. So, there are two learning strategies that can be compatible with your brain. So, first strategy, we have repeatedly activating your neurons. So, because the connections between your neurons need to be activated multiple times to become stronger and more efficient, a first and crucial strategy is to repeatedly activate them. This means that to learn arithmetic tables, for instance, you have to practice it repeatedly to establish the trail between your neurons. So, as a baby, you were not able to speak and walk within one day. You practice a lot. However, it is important to note that only reading or glancing at your arithmetic tables will not be that helpful in connecting your neurons. You might also find it quite disengaging and boring. To create the connections between your neurons, you need to retrieve the arithmetic tables from your memory. In other words, you have to try, recall the answer yourself to activate your connections. We are not saying that this is easy to do. However, scientists think that this struggle improves learning because the challenge is an indication that you are building new connections. Remember, learning something new is like hiking in a bush with no designated trail. You will probably walk slowly at first. Trails will start forming and eventually you will be walking on wall. You will be walking. Besides, when you do try to recall what you have learned and make a mistake, it can help you identify gaps in your learning and give you an indication of which trail still needs to be worked on. Is spacing the activation of neurons. Now that you know that neurons need to be activated repeatedly for learning to occur, and that it means retrieving information, you probably wonder how often you should practice. Scientists who study the learning brain observe that breaks and sleep between learning periods enhance learning and minimize forgetting. It therefore seems better to retrieve often within space practice sessions as opposed to a mass practice, practicing a task continuously without rest. So now, we have 6 tips on memorizing. So first is assign meaningfulness to things. So in this tip, it's elaborate on what you're learning and apply the knowledge to something important to you. An example, your prof used something you saw in a documentary or an everyday experience. You probably don't remember what you were last Friday, but you can remember what you were to prom. New information is most strongly encoded when you relate it to information you already know. And encoding is deepest when you assign meaning to new information. The more logical connections you can make to the new information, the stronger the memory. So in terms of memorizing, it is very important to assign meaningfulness to things. It is easy to memorize if you elaborate on what you are learning and apply the knowledge to something important to you. So when memorizing, it is very important to assign meaningfulness to things. It is easy for you to memorize if you will elaborate on what you are learning and you will apply the knowledge to something important to you. Not just like you are talking, repeating the line. So the second tip on memorizing is learn general and specific later. So this method helps with retrieval. So if you know a piece of information falls within a broader category, it's easier to access. So In memorizing, if you have a stock knowledge or you know a lot of information that falls with your topics or your broader categories, it is easier for you to access.
It's easy for you.
Memorize the lines, the lessons, or the articles. The third tip on memorizing is we have recite out loud in your own words
Until you don't need to refer to your notes.
Based on my experience, every time I memorize or something that I have to memorize, I always speak out loud. I always recite out loud in my own words because I want to hear what I am speaking, what am I talking, what am I reciting, until I don't need to refer to my notes. So until I memorize the lines. The fourth tip on memorizing is teach someone else. So teaching the information to someone else is one of the best ways to learn. But if you don't have a willing listener like parent or a friend, you can teach the wall. You can teach yourself. You can speak or you can talk to yourself for you to memorize. The fifth tip on memorizing is use memory devices. So in this tip, there are many different devices you can use to help memorize information. So including acoustics, chunking. Remember larger numbers in smaller chunks. You can use method of lossy. Visualize a familiar place and associate objects to it. You can use flashcards. Flashcards, it is good for specific facts. You can shuffle cards and recite out loud. Put a question on one side, the answer on the other. So with that, by using the memory devices, you can memorize the information. You can help yourself to memorize the informations. Tip and the last tip on memorizing is practice questions. So whether they are already in your textbook or you have to make them up yourself, try to do as many as possible rather than just reciting information. Questions ask you to apply your knowledge, ensuring you actually understand the information. So in this tip, for me, this is a good one to practice questions. Practice questions, ask questions to yourself.
In conclusion, I firmly believe that all the lessons, all the strategies, and all the tips that I've discussed are helpful in managing and caring for the self, in managing and caring ourselves. And that ends my discussion, Prof. Thank you and God bless. Merry Christmas and advance Happy New Year. Thank you.